When Iron Man 1 was released in 2008, few people would have predicted that 10 years later we'd receive a two-part finale in the form of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and both of these movies were critically praised, along with reaching the top 5 highest grossing films of all time list. However, what if things ended differently? What if instead of a two-part finale, we actually got a three-part conclusion following a similar story with the sense of beginning, middle, and end, but with a few little things added here and there, maybe changed just a bit to make everything go together, I guess technically in my opinion, a bit more nicely. And that's what we're going to explore today in this editorial. Now, when outlining the story, the first film would be very similar to what we got in Infinity War, except we wouldn't be killing off Black Order. Instead, we'd have them just retreat to rejoin Thanos on Titan, and when Thanos journeys to Vormir for the Soul Stone, I'd also replace the Red Skull with Lady Death. Now, this is because the Soul Stone's manipulation of life and death, I feel like would just naturally be under Lady Death's jurisdiction, along with the fact that Red Skull's inclusion and return to the MCU was never really paid off in Endgame, because a lot of people thought the satisfying kind of follow-up to having Red Skull reappear would be Red Skull meeting and interacting with Captain America in some way, shape, or form. And for all intents and purposes, we did not receive that, so it just kind of seems pointless that they brought back the character in general. Even though that's obviously a strong opinion on my end, a lot of people feel naturally the other way about it. The drawback to introducing Lady Death into the MCU in this fashion will obviously be asking questions about the other cosmic abstracts, things like that. But according to the Guardians of the Galaxy, the first Guardians of the Galaxy, they always kind of hinted that there was a relationship between the Infinity Stones and the cosmic abstracts. To a certain point, we don't know, but it was kind of hinted that maybe they created the Infinity Stones through some method. We just don't know the full details, but it was kind of in that mural on Morag that showed the abstracts surrounding the various Infinity Stones. So having that relationship wouldn't be out of the blue entirely from what the rest of the MCU has established. And also, I think you can have fun with this going down, which we'll talk about in the two-part aspect of this editorial. Now, I would still like to have Vision, of course, attacked by Corvus and killed, but instead of being killed immediately by Thanos, I would have Corvus kind of injured Vision more. I feel like Vision didn't really get a good chance to really kind of stand on his own. He was basically injured the entirety of the movie, which kind of sucked for the character because he was so powerful. It would have been really cool to see what he could do against Thanos and his forces without him basically limping for 3/4 of the film. But after Thanos claims the Mind Stone, I'd have him return to Titan and then battle Doctor Strange, just because it would have been really cool to see how Doctor Strange would fare against all the different Infinity Stones plus Mind, considering the mental aspects of his abilities. I think that'd be really cool to see. And also, I think it'd be really interesting if Thanos used the Mind Stone against Mantis and all the other members of the Avengers and Guardians that were on Titan, and have him basically kind of lie about being under her sway to maybe test what their kind of, conviction is. Just like he did when he was messing with the Guardians on, not Vormir, but on Nowhere. I think it'd be really interesting to kind of get a similar sequence there, considering a big part of the film is that the Avengers and the Guardians aren't willing to make that sacrifice. They're not willing to go all out with their conviction, so to speak, while Thanos, on the other hand, is willing to do so. So I think having the Mind Stone introduced to Thanos in this way would be rather interesting, just because also we could see maybe some really cool creative combinations with other Infinity Stones that Thanos would, I guess, use while in combat against Doctor Strange. And then I would have that kind of end off with Doctor Strange sending Thanos back to Wakanda, probably because everyone on Titan's already defeated, so there's not really much else they could do there. But at least this way, maybe, kind of a Hail Mary type thing, something could happen. And, you could still have Thor do his thing, and the film would end, of course, with the infamous snap that would occur. And instead of calling this movie Infinity War, I'd probably go with something like Infinity Quest, considering the majority of the film is Thanos acquiring the Infinity Stones versus really any type of war really happening. I mean, if anything, there's like a battle or two, but I really wouldn't call that a war. I feel like that'd just kind of be misleading altogether. Now, with the second movie, I would set that in between the events of what we got in Infinity War and Endgame initially, what was actually released in the theaters, and there would be a time skip, of course, just like there was with Endgame, but it wouldn't be as far. And I think the villain for this movie, it'd be cool to have Ronan be the villain of this movie, with the Avengers not realizing it's Hawkeye until closer to the end of the film. And I wouldn't have the Avengers even directly battle Ronan throughout the movie until also closer to the end, where they basically understand that this is actually Hawkeye, and I'd have Black Widow make that realization closer to the climax of the movie. And I guess in the Avengers during this plot basically would be trying to stop Ronan from destabilizing certain governments and taking on a lot of the criminal underground across the world, considering the world's already very fragile, very vulnerable at this moment. The last thing it needs is several world governments being destabilized because someone's going in there and killing off several integral leaders to their various governments. And of course, from Ronan's point of view, he's kind of getting his revenge tour going on here, like he did in Endgame against the Yakuza and the cartels and other criminal organizations across the world. He's doing his kind of thing there, but obviously he's lashing out because he's so angry about the death of his family at the hands of Thanos. Now, when the Avengers find, more specifically when Black Widow finds out that Clint is really Ronan, I think from here it'd be really cool to really explore Clint's pain and a much more personal type of Avengers movie than we've received before, especially if we can give more of a focus to Black Widow and Hawkeye's characters respectively. And I think this would also tie in nicely with Endgame, where having Black Widow truly save Clint from who he's going to become as Ronan. I think that'd make the sacrifice more satisfying in Endgame, because obviously, yes, we know the characters have history with each other, and it's been said that Black Widow's life was saved once upon a time by Hawkeye when he was sent to kill her, and instead that he kind of rehabbed her and recruited her to become a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's all been said and done, yes, and Budapest is really cool, but I think this would just make everything more impactful when we get to Endgame, and we get to that kind of sacrifice moment between the two characters on Vormir. And I think also the second movie would be a great moment to really flesh out and show more of the world post-snap. We obviously saw what Captain America was doing. We could, of course, be shown instead of being just told what Bruce did to become the merged Hulk. The audience could see Tony really kind of retreating from who he's been persona-wise, ego-wise, and, forming his new family with Pepper and all that good stuff. While, of course, Black Widow takes on more of the leadership role that we see she has in Endgame. And for Black Widow, you could also use this as a way of maybe kind of laying the seeds for her solo film, since rumors say that her solo movie will take place in between Infinity War and Endgame. And if we want to go to Thanos, I think it'd be really cool if, for his part of the film, since he wouldn't be left out, I think it'd be cool to watch him maybe utilize the Soul Stone in a few more ways, kind of going off of what he did in Infinity War. And if Thanos is being more retrospective in this film after his work is complete, it'd be cool to see maybe some selective flashbacks to his childhood on Titan, kind of showing what made Thanos Thanos, and also at the same time what led to Titan's demise. Originally, this was going to be included in the novel Thanos Titan Consumed, which was by Barry Lyga, until last minute Marvel decided to make the book non-canon. And rumors claim this was actually Marvel punishing the publisher for, spoiling some elements in the novel that bled into Avengers Endgame without Marvel's permission. If they went this route and introduced Lady Death as being the one who provides the user with the Soul Stone on Vormir, which would have been in the first part of this kind of trilogy, I think it'd be cool to also follow up on that and tie into it more by having her be the one who manipulates Thanos ever since Thanos learns and experiences what happened to Titan during, Titan's doom, so to speak, when everyone dies out and all that good stuff. It would probably make him a Mad Titan, so to speak, because, he'd be a bit insane at this point, especially if he's being not necessarily corrupted, but influenced by an entity like Lady Death. Also, it'd be really interesting because it would make his journey of getting the Infinity Stones and doing the snap a bit divine in a sense, because obviously Lady Death is, in a way, shape, or form, it's a cosmic entity, but you could view it as like a god, a divine being. And also, because of that, you could argue that it supersedes his journey being more important, of course, than saving everybody from the Avengers' point of view, which would also, in a really weird way, make him a bit justified, which is kind of odd. and of course connect more with the comics. And actually in the Thanos Quest storyline, Lady Death was the one who gave Thanos permission to collect and utilize all the Infinity Gems, which is what they were called in the comics at that time. And I think kind of with the Black Order, since in this version they wouldn't have been killed off in the first movie, a cool subplot for them would be leading the Chitauri forces against Captain Marvel and various intergalactic governments that have come together, such as the Kree and maybe remnants of the Nova Empire, against Thanos and Thanos' forces. And I think that makes a lot of sense because not just Earth was affected by the events of the snap, so you would think that the Kree and other intergalactic empires would be angry at Thanos and want to take action against Thanos as well. And since Thanos is retired, he really wouldn't be active in this kind of event. So I would have Captain Marvel and her allies defeat the Black Order and defeat the Chitauri army, yet unable to find Thanos, and tracking the Infinity Stone's energy, it would ideally naturally bring Captain Marvel to Earth, since that's where the snap was located at, and kind of bathe Earth in a lot of Infinity Stone energy, as Rocket Raccoon said in Avengers Endgame. So I think that would make a lot more sense for her being on Earth specifically during that time versus, Nick Fury with his intergalactic pager. Not saying that's a bad thing, I was just thinking that, it would just kind of make more sense to the story itself. But yeah, and I would title this movie, I guess, Infinity War instead, if a movie had to be called that. Now, with third movie, I would leave Endgame basically rather the same. I think the only change I would make is have this movie take place immediately after the events of the Part 2 film. And overall, I think, with the second film, I wouldn't attempt to change much. I would just, really the whole point of the second parter would just be to flesh out some things more and really kind of just expand upon things more, because a lot of these things, once Endgame's credits roll, we'll never really touch upon again. Like, we'll likely never really touch upon, in a movie at least, what Bruce Banner did to really become the merged Hulk. Because we've seen him in previous films talk about how he handles the Hulk, but to merge with the Hulk, that's a whole different thing. At the same time, really going to Thanos' backstory, his flashbacks, those kind of things, we'll likely never get a chance to really do on the big screen, maybe in a comic spin-off or something like that, but never in the big screen, even though that was something originally planned in, I guess, an early draft of Infinity War. Maybe they filmed some stuff but took it out, who knows. But yeah, comment below your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think about this? Would you have preferred an Infinity Trilogy kind of ending out Phase 3 of the MCU? Or are you just happy with Infinity War and Endgame? Obviously, this is just my opinion, and this is just a fan throwing their ideas out here. I don't really hope Marvel, backtracks Infinity War, Endgame, anything like that. That'd be absurd. But comment below your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think about this type of idea? And we'll see you guys later.